Good morning, John.
Hey, good morning, John. How are you?
Hey, how are you doing? Oh my goodness, it's spring and it's nice weather here in Dallas. How is it up in Connecticut?
It's fabulous. And I was just watering my oak trees that are being grown from acorns.
Oh my gosh, that's pretty cool. That's
Yeah.
pretty cool.
And it's perfect timing, right? Because this ties into going green, right?
It does. It does. And it's certainly a topic that's moved front and center. We talk about going green, we talk about sustainability, and a lot of the things in our industry specifically around technology and people and geography and geographical reach and things like that have become table stakes, and things like sustainability have really moved front and center. They move front and center. So without further ado, let's actually welcome our guests. We've got Rob Brindley and Anay Nawathe. Welcome to the show this morning, gentlemen.
Thanks for having us.
Great. We are in, actually, believe it or not, this is episode 24 and year 2 for us. It's hard to believe.
Man.
Hey, so I got a question. This is supposed to be like a pseudo technology podcast. Why would like going green? How does that relate, Anay and Rob? How does this all tie in?
Rob, you can take a first stab.
Yeah. Let me take a first stab. So, sustainability, for me, let me just throw a definition out. Maybe we ought to talk about what is sustainability for starters, John.
Yeah.
So, for me, it's about bringing the combination of our current world and making that, connection with nature so that the world that we live in today is here for future generations. And so there's a stewardship responsibility there. I don't know. So what do you guys think? What does sustainability mean to you guys?
Well, I mean, sustainability for me is like I compost. I'm growing my oak trees here on my desk. But it's like, how much can I possibly do? I'm getting some solar panels. But when I think about, large firms, Ford Motor Company, General Motors, Procter & Gamble, and they're talking about incorporating this into board level conversations, is it just PR wash, or is there really something happening in the world of IT and infrastructure related to it? Because I'm not going to contribute that much, but a Procter & Gamble or a General Motors, if they did something, it could be huge. So is it just wash, or is it real?
It is real. There is a heavy dose of PR wash in it too. So that is one of the things that we're seeing, is there's a difference between what we're seeing on someone's front page of their homepage on their website and what actually happens. But having said that, there is real action that's being taken a lot by some of these gigantic, especially big tech companies. There's some big tech giants that consume as much power from their infrastructure, their IT stuff, as some pretty major American cities right now. Yeah. We've been hearing things like big data for over a decade now. Behind all of that rise in big data, there's really energy heavy big data centers, right? So that is really where the IT side of sustainability comes in, is how are you, making sure that part of the business is sustainable as well.
And the other thing I think it's sort of interesting that you hear these days is that, I mean, first of all, people need to do it. All of us need to do it. It may seem, John, like, how much could you do, or I do, or any of us on this conversation today personally contribute? But when you multiply that times the billions of people on the planet, obviously it makes a huge difference. Companies need to do it too. But the interesting piece is that lots of companies only want to do business with other companies who are indeed knee deep in sustainability issues, right? Anay and Rob, that's what we're seeing and hearing out in the marketplace.
Oh, for sure, John. There's no doubt about it. So, all of our managed service providers that we do business today, along with the service integrators, if you go to their websites, there's a splash page on sustainability. What are they doing relative to green IT? They're utilizing more energy efficient equipment. They're also making commitments that they're going to be green IT, 100% green IT, and some have already achieved it, by 2025 or 2030. So they're out there making commitments, and then they want to go help their clients, right? They want to help their clients hit their sustainability goals, not only through what they're doing to be sustainable, but also helping their clients, become more efficient and effective in their use of the consumption of power.
Yeah. We actually, John and Rob, we actually had somebody on the show several months ago, Hitachi Vantara, and I interviewed one of their executives a few weeks ago at our Experience Summit, and they want to be green by 2030, where they're zero carbon neutral, right? Is kind of the term. And then they want to have their entire supply chain green, carbon neutral by 2050, meaning, to John's point, they're actually going to work down to all their suppliers to make sure that they're green going in. I thought that's pretty astonishing. Do you see that being a trend?
Yeah, and I even see that becoming a requirement. So I think it was even 2 weeks ago, the SEC started, tossing around the idea of you need to be able to have auditable, sort of climate metrics. So you need to be tracking what are not only you emitting, but your entire supply chain, what they're calling, scope 3 sort of emissions. So everyone from your manufacturers through your supply, who is actually doing the logistics, they're all going to be part of your carbon footprint as well. So there's going to have to be changes being made to, hey, maybe we don't go to this, factory in China that's using some coal for manufacturing what we need, and there's going to be some pretty big business changes that come about.
Huge impact. So let's talk about how actually we can, if I'm an organization and I'm watching today's show, you got to start somewhere, and most everybody probably has some initiatives. There's no question about that. But how do you turn up that volume? How do you return? And what are some of the areas that are a little bit probably more commonplace for people to be looking at to make such lofty statements like JB just mentioned, where, by 2025, I'll be carbon neutral, or by 2030, all of my suppliers and the supply chain will be carbon neutral. I'll only do business with people that are that way. What are some of the initiatives that we're talking about?
Well, it starts at the top, really. So I think, even right now, a lot of these sustainability conversations are happening at the CEO level. But what needs to happen is, the sustainability topic needs to be embedded into some of the other performance metrics, into some of your decision criteria. So as we mentioned, when you're looking for different providers to do stuff, there should be a key metric that says, hey, what are they doing for sustainability? And then really let your, for one thing, make that a KPI. What is your sustainability goals? And then 2, let your money do the talking.
Right. Is the actuality of the implementation of those initiatives, and this is a bit of a tricky question, but not a trick question. Is it measurable, or is it a little bit gray?
Rob, I'll let you take that.
Yeah. It is still a little bit of a gray space, JW, because there's not, quote unquote, an industry standard measure for sustainability. Now, can it be measured? Yeah, there's multiple ways to measure it, and that's what the challenge is. There's not a standard way to measure it. So lots of companies are measuring it, and they're successfully measuring it for their objectives, which is a good thing. But we need to advance that, so we all talk on a common sheet of music, if you will, and we're all measuring the same thing consistently, so we can hold each other accountable to achieve the objective of driving out.
Let's think about where the rubber meets the road. ISG, largest advisory firm in the world, $18 billion a year, 850 clients. Are the RFPs and RFIs that we're seeing from our clients starting to include the things we're talking about?
Oh, absolutely. And that's sort of how Rob and I started getting into this space. Is we do a lot of the cloud work, and when we're actually moving into massive workloads from someone's on-prem data center into like an AWS or a Azure or a Google Cloud, they're part of that value proposition is the sustainability part of it. And that's being built into almost every single RFP that we see these days.
Right.
That's amazing. Now, is the answer just, simple, just move to the cloud, or it's more complex than that, right? It's not just, the answer is always not moving to the cloud, but components, et cetera. And then how does, AWS, Google, and Azure, how are they then maintaining? Because again, there's still some energy being utilized, servers are being utilized, whether it's in the cloud or in the back office. So how are they adjusting?
Well, for sure, going to a hyperscaler, as Anay described, they have goals for sustainability and getting to green IT. So that's one of the easiest things that clients can do to have a huge impact on their own sustainability goes from an IT perspective is by going to the cloud or going to a green data center. So co-location provider is another way to get there. Then the other thing, JB, as you were kind of hitting on, is if you're going to continue to run systems on your on-prem centers, then use energy efficient equipment. Interestingly enough, there is pretty big deltas. I mean, everybody tends to meet the Energy Star requirement, but there are other providers out there of equipment that are more efficient than others. And so you can make a purchasing decision, as Anay just described, as a consumer on which equipment you're going to buy and getting that energy efficient product versus something else. And then the other thing is there's other things like recycling of equipment. Interestingly enough, I found this out just the other day, is Apple recovered over 2,000 pounds of gold. There's gold in them there parts. And that was just 5 years ago. So think about that for a minute. Just because of poor disposal habits, we're actually throwing away some precious metals that could be reused to make equipment that we use today. So disposal is another key component. So think of equipment recycling. Guess what? We still use a lot of paper. That's number 3 on the list, guys. Number 3 in the IT space. If you want to make a change in your sustainability footprint, go look at energy efficiency, go look at equipment recycling, and go look at paper reduction. Those are the big 3 impacts you can have right now.
God, I was going to start mining Bitcoin, but I think I should be mining old equipment.
Yes.
Right.
I tell you what, you bring up a good one, JB. That is one of the most energy consuming in IT is the mining of cryptocurrency.
Talk to us a little bit about that, Rob, because that's like a big thing. And, you've got Roblox and all these other companies talking about, utilizing NFTs, et cetera. But what's the environment impact? And I'll give you a little hint here is my son, he's 19 years old at university. He won't get involved because he said, John, I don't know much about this Bitcoin thing, but you should do an NFT ASAP. He goes, no, Dad. He goes, it's not environmentally friendly. So tell us a little bit about that whole world.
Yeah. So, so think of, when you go into a mine, I think people can build a relationship of, going into a coal mine. There's this big, heavy equipment, industrial equipment. Well, you're doing the same thing when you're mining a cryptocurrency, except you're using computing power. So all those CPUs, and it takes lots of servers to go mine for a cryptocurrency, and along with the storage devices. So, companies that are in the cryptocurrency mining business are looking for cheap power locations, not necessarily clean ones, but cheap power cost. And so, so some of those companies are actually moving around right now as we speak. Their computing resources because of the cost of energy, because it takes so much power.
And that is like going by design.
A country that uses a lot of coal would be cheaper than utilizing, interesting.
Exactly.
And speaking of countries, I mean, one of the things, JB, you and I were chatting about the other day is I think that there's even sort of global initiatives like the United Nations, right, that are looking at ways and of sort of defining what this means and putting together very specific goals and initiatives across multiple types of things that someone can do, whether it's personally, whether it's from a corporate perspective, or whether it's at the country level, right?
Well, there's 17 that are listed at the United Nations, and we'll give you a link to this. But I think this is a really interesting area, John, you talk about, because I'm pretty confident that all 17 in some form or fashion could be positively impacted by approaches in technology. And Rob and Anay, I think it'd be really interesting is maybe over the next, between now and the end of the year is maybe writing a little bit about how IT plays in those 17 areas. And maybe by the end of the year, we'll have you back and kind of review those thoughts because, even poverty and other areas that are have dramatic impacts on us as human beings on this planet, we can have a positive impact through technology, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great idea.
So we'll give you the homework. And then the other thing I want to talk about, going back to Bitcoin really quick too, is this idea of the startups is people don't tend to start up things unless they think they can make money.
That's
and
right.
I was reading a PwC report, 3,000 climate tech startups, 87.5 billion, just since 2020. So it's not about saving the planet and not making money. It's about saving the planet while making money. Is that the case?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, as I even mentioned with this SEC new regulation that may be coming out, that's going to create its own sort of businesses of how do you actually audit, how do you measure, right? So someone like a PwC could actually gain quite a bit of revenue from that. But there's startups doing everything. It's a lot of these different challenges that we were talking about. The one that Rob mentioned about not being able to accurately measure. There are tons of these sort of SaaS dashboard types of companies that are saying, well, here's how you can actually, measure it, at least so when a lot of other folks are also using it, there's going to be some level of apples to apples. And then there's a lot of people who are doing, creating marketplaces for being able to get carbon credits and whatnot. And that's how a lot of these big companies are actually getting to that, carbon neutral level. Is they'll try to get as efficient as possible, and then buy sort of carbon offsets in the form of credits going forward.
Do you think that they'll actually be, do you think that the world will eventually move towards like what I call a gold standard, no pun intended, of, sustainability? I mean, do you really like right now there's good housekeeping seal of approval, right? There's all sorts of certifications, if you will.
Right.
And it just seems to me that, again, because this topic has moved front and center, that people are probably wrestling with, A, what do I do? B, how do I measure? How do I know when I've done enough? And probably the answer is I've never done enough. You can always be doing more. But I think, how do you sort of, if I, as a consumer, whether or not as a personal consumer, as a corporate consumer, and I'm looking at partners, how do I know that for example, like John mentioned earlier, that the supply chain, partners that I'm working with are actually doing the right things? Will there be a gold standard that says, yes, this company gets the check mark, right, and therefore they're on the list if there was a list?
Yeah, I absolutely see that. But I don't think there's going to be necessarily one gold. There might be several different standards that end up becoming sort of accredited by, whatever regulatory agency that there may be. And there's actually a lot of startups and just companies in general that are already trying to be that verifier.
Yeah, listen.
Okay.
I think this topic is so timely because next Friday is Earth Day, April 22nd, and it started 30 some odd years ago, and I think it was this idea of like for 12 hours everyone cared about the planet and then got back to work.
Yeah.
And now it seems like Earth Day is almost 365 days a year, and that's what's getting exciting, right? It's the politics have moved to the side, right? It's not red and blue anymore. It's really trying to figure out like, geez, I have a house in Florida and I'd like to be able to go to it without scuba gear, in 2040. So what is the most interesting project, Rob or Anay, and maybe it's cloud work. You don't have to give us the client's name, but what are some of the more interesting projects or things that you're investigating in the marketplace right now to make sure that I can go to my house in Florida in 2040?
So there are a lot of these startups that are doing things like just SaaS dashboards, but there's also a lot of sort of deep tech innovation that's being created as well. So there's folks that are discovering ways to sort of recapture carbon from the air using different sorts of materials, and that I think is going to have some pretty great long-term effects there, because it's not only just how do you get efficient with your carbon usage. It's not net zero. It's going to be net negative, which is going to be the best way of actually reversing some of these effects that we've had.
Wow. Rob, your thoughts? Anything you're most excited about working on?
Yeah. So, one of the things that is really exciting, because it is happening. Our clients are as Anay described earlier, is our clients are asking as part of their requirements. Our basic templates for going to market in an RFP process for a transaction, we have a sustainability set of requirements, a statement of work that a supplier has to comply to or explain why they're not going to, right? And then they may or may not make a down selection award. So it's exciting to see clients, because I think at the end of the day, it's all of this is going to be consumer driven, right? We as consumers need to say, this is what I'm willing to buy, and I'm willing to buy something that it has a sustainable component to it. And the other piece of this thing that's really interesting is our clients are now starting to move from, you know what, I do generate an emission, I do generate a waste. Is there an opportunity to turn that into another product or service or capability to enhance my service and product offerings to my customers? So why, look at these downstream impacts and turn them into revenue opportunities. I think that there's real excitement there. And Anay was kind of hitting on some of it with, there are companies that are startups that are looking out there, that are out there looking to develop solutions that our clients that are in the manufacturing sector, which is most obvious, can purchase and therefore become sustainable and reach their goals and objectives of zero impact to the environment.
Yeah, you think about manufacturing, it's a good point. We've got our Tech Exchange Smart Manufacturing event next week in Chicago. Mm-hmm. And I mean, that's going to be a hot topic is, the ESG, right? It's not just the environment. Environment is the E, it's the social and the governance components. And I like the way that we kind of aren't just about, let's plant trees and, carbon. It's actually, it deals with the social component, right?
Sure.
And then the governance. So those three actually have helped, I think, bring this to the forefront. Would you agree?
Oh, absolutely. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I mean, John, it's interesting, you kind of talked about scuba gear in Florida. When's the next hurricane going to hit, and how much of that weather system is being generated by the impact that we're having on the environment? I mean, science says it is that there is an impact, right? And the thing is that it impacts all of us as consumers when it comes time to fund the rebuild. We pay for it in the form of higher insurance costs, for example. And then families get displaced because they don't have the ability to make their contribution in addition to insurance to rebuild and recover. Mm-hmm. So there's a huge social impact that we all suffer from. But as a consumer, if we can go in there and change and hit our goals around sustainability that we all believe in, we can actually hopefully change some of our weather systems that are occurring, and you won't need scuba gear to go down to your Florida home.
And it's not just actually hurricanes. So, here in Dallas, for example, especially in the spring, this is really heavy tornado time for us. And, and it's interesting. This is the fourth week in a row. We've had these incredible supercell systems come through the Southwest and actually literally move across the United States into the Southeast. I mean, they've gone all the way over to the East Coast, doing damage all the way from Texas to Georgia, right? Mm-hmm. And the thought is now that there's going to be another set of storms. So next week will be the fifth week in a row that these supercells have come through, and they said it's climate change related. It really is. And it's interesting because I think people sort of thought, I'll never really be able to sense this change. And oh my gosh, people now are saying, yes, I can sense there's more hurricanes. And oh, by the way, they're more damaging than they used to be. There seems to be more supercell activity happening across the United States and other parts of the world. And oh, by the way, they're more damaging than they ever have been. So, and you hear about Arctic ice and melting and things like that. We see in the news, some giant ice shelf the size of Rhode Island fell off again, in the last couple of weeks. And these things are happening exponentially faster than we ever thought that they were. I think a lot of people thought, oh, this stuff is so far out, my grandchildren won't even have to worry about it, but it's here and now.
Right. That's some of the reason. Oh yeah. That's some of the reason why there's so much financial, investment going into it as well. Someone like a BlackRock sees, these houses going down or, entire cities being leveled by flooding as a financial risk, right? So they're doubling down on their climate initiatives there because they're saying, hey, if the climate actually goes crazy, I'm losing all this money, and they're one of the biggest real estate investors.
Exactly. And I think one of the fears, not to get political, but a social comment here, and I think it's an important one, is that, a lot of people, everyone's seeing these things happen around us, and science is proving it. There's no question about it. What I hope doesn't happen, I'm curious to get y'all's opinions on this, as we say here in Texas, is that people say, oh, it's so far gone that there's no correcting. There's no correcting, or we're already on a path where global warming is going to hit a tipping point no matter what we do now. But that's not the case, right? There's lots that can be done now that will mitigate will be happening over the next 10 or 20 years, right?
And I think we have to go back to the beginning of the conversation, and that is, can John Westfield, Rob Brindley, and Anay, Nawathe, and John Boccuzzi make a difference? And it is actually we can, because we can shop with our social hat on, right? So the idea is big firms will make changes if the consumer is demanding it. And my son, 19, coming up behind me, is saying not interested in NFTs, not interested in Bitcoin because you're hurting the planet. Yeah. So it's this supply and demand component. And look at the exchange traded funds now. Socially responsible exchange traded funds have been around for a while, but they're actually having a meaningful impact. Before it was kind of like, hey, I feel good today because I'm driving my giant Chevy pickup truck and eating out of a plastic bag, but I bought an ETF that's going to save the planet. Now people are driving their Tesla, eating out of a compostable bag, and buying an ETF saying, I'm backing what I believe in.
Yeah. No, absolutely, JW. I think it's fascinating that I think the train has left the station. To your point, I think the train, you can still catch the train. There's plenty of seats on the train, so let's all get on the train. And as you were talking, I started thinking about it for a second, and I was like, there's little things that we can do right now. To your point on just being a consumer, but just around your house. How many people leave their laptop running all day long? At the end of the day, do they power it off? Think about all this spam mail that we get and text messages that we get. Boy, I'd love for those things to stop. But, we can do a little bit to stop that. We can go hit the magical switch there and indicate it's spam, and they'll go block the site. So that way it doesn't go to the next step and flood our inbox. We can think about how we do basic things like how we consume power. Do I need the light on right now? When you go shopping, can I do all my trips in one trip? I mean, the price of gasoline says, I'm going to start thinking about how I'm going somewhere, let alone the energy of cost associated with that. But think about, can I make all my stops in one trip and not make multiple trips in my car all day long?
Exactly.
It's little lifestyle changes that are not too hard. It just takes a moment to think about it and say, I could do this a little differently, and it'll save me money too.
That's right. And those little things add up. I mean, it doesn't, there could be huge chunks, but there could be bite-sized chunks too that are additive that make a difference personally, as well as at a corporate level, as well as at a country level. Right. So,
Exactly. No,
I'm gonna hedge my bet, and I'm still gonna buy Neutrogena's new 300 UV suntan lotion, just as a hedge, just in case we can't pull this off.
You should have that, and while you're at it, you should replace that gas guzzling truck of yours with the new Ford Lightning that's debuting on the 26th of this month.
And it's a cool looking truck too, right? Yeah. It's cool. It is cool. That it used to be, and I'm going to say this out loud, a lot of the electric vehicles, and probably talking around 10 or 15 years ago, were not the prettiest vehicles. And all of a sudden that has changed dramatically, and now they're the best looking ones. Some of them out there are just amazing looking, right? At least I believe they are.
Yeah, the new Ford electric, the new Chevy Silverado electric. There are some really cool vehicles coming out the door. Rob, I think you had a number, a stat with regards to how many Tesla vehicles are out the door.
Well, yeah. So Tesla has delivered 2 million vehicles since 2009.
Wow.
And so, and their market share, I think they own 14% of the market share for EVs, so which is pretty substantial.
And they're about to come out with that Cybertruck that's going to start production here in the next couple of months.
Yeah. So it's really interesting, when you think about it, a company like Ford, who makes the #1 selling vehicle in the United States, they've electrified it. What does that tell you the consumer wants to buy? They're willing to take that risk and put that into the marketplace and change their vehicle. So I think, as I kind of said earlier, I think the train's left the station. I think we're on the ride. I think we all need to kind of think about things just one more minute longer each day and say, what can I do to help the environment and help sustainability? What little changes can I make? Because I, as a consumer, as well as what I do day in and day out, will make a difference.
That's awesome.
Great.
Well, Rob and Anay, thank you both so much for coming on. Looking
Thank you,
forward
thank
to
you.
reading some of your blogs over the next few months on those 17 objectives, and we'll talk to you soon.
Absolutely.
Sounds good.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks, Anay.
Thanks for having
Thanks,
us.
guys.
John, that was
Wow.
awesome.
Pretty cool topic. And we need a lot more than 30 minutes to talk about it. We need to bring them back soon because this is just evolving literally. And it's not just, I don't want to wait a couple months. I mean, even in a couple weeks from now, things will be a little bit different. And it's so impactful. It's so impactful. And the exciting thing for me, and John, I know you're excited about this too, is that, you know, people sort of half paid attention to this stuff even a couple years ago and no longer. I think people realize this is really important personally, corporate wise, as a country, as the world. It's really, really important stuff. It's
exciting. And I'm very proud that it's amazing that we work for an advisory research firm and actually we can have an impact. Like that's pretty cool because you don't think that IT could be part of the solution, but it absolutely can be part of the solution. So it's very exciting.
Big part of the
solution. What do we have on in 2 weeks? What do you have on our
So
next
so another topic that we love to talk about, we're going to revisit, and that is cybersecurity with a little bit different twist. We're going to talk about, you know, what people really should be spending on security as part of their technology initiatives. So we're going to have Chris Pattacini and Doug Sailors back on the show with us. And that'll be on Thursday, the 28th of April. Looking forward to that episode. That'll be episode number 25.
All right. Awesome. And I'll go order my electric Silverado right now.
There you go. Me too. Thank you so much, JB. Thanks everybody for watching.
Bye-bye.